Hi, you might have noticed I'm not a disembodied voice anymore. This is all thanks to Rocky over on Fiverr. Check her out, I'll leave her link in the description. Now let's get into the video proper. The Yokai Watch 3 meta is incredibly diverse. Odd yokai that you wouldn't think would ever be useful like Pandal, Dumbcap and Wrongneck are all amazing and competitive. But the top of the food chain is still full of overpowered threats and supports that make whole team archetypes possible by themselves. Everything has counters though. Top meta threats counter other top meta threats, sure, but there are also some yokai that exist only to be anti-meta. In this video I'll be looking at both ends of the spectrum as we look at a few notable yokai in the counter meta. Number 1. Repossessor. Repossessor is probably the most important anti-meta yokai in the whole game. His skill disables the attack he got hit by for the yokai that used it. This lasts until he dies. Solar Elma, Dedicator, any strong wall breaker or magic attacker, they all can't deal with the Repossessor. Repo is hard to use and a little bit RNG based, but it is so worth it if you can pull up disabling your opponent's main defense. You can even do this by having him hold a Peerless Soul, and then there's no drawback, you can just switch him out immediately. There's not really much else to say about Repo, honestly. If you find that your team has hard counters by a specific archetype, you can try and put Repo on there, and 9 times out of 10, he'll come in really handy. Number 2. Graceful and Lapping It Up. I want to talk about these two together, as they both do very similar things. They share a skill which makes all positive inspires go directly to themselves. This applies to your own team as well as your opponents. This does not affect ultimate boosts like Pelicans, only actual inspires like Dumbcaps. Dumbcap and Donchan are both incredible supports and are on a lot of teams. Their stat boosting inspires are so powerful, and they give a lot of yokai the boost they need to obliterate the other team. Dumbcap is especially powerful as he has 2 item slots and a great stat spread to go with his skill, so all he really ever does is dodge and buff magic attackers. Donchan still has his place though. He is harder to fit on teams, but it's worth it. Having a Graceful or Lapping It Up chilling on your board with a Stealth Soul completely invalidates these two, alongside some other boosters that are more specific like Naked Speed. They also have pretty good stats, and Lapping It Up is part of the Brave tribe. Graceful being shady makes him a bit harder to fit on teams, but in exchange he makes much better use of the Dumbcap buff, which is much more common than Donchan. The utility of stealing buffs in the first place is enough though. They don't need to actually be able to use the buffs themselves, it's just a nice bonus. These two are both A rank, so they do have competition, but they are definitely worth using if you can. Number 3. Bishamantan and Salty Bacon. I'm also lumping these two together because they share one key quality, fire immunity. Both of their skills make it fall fire attacks do 0 damage, and they boost the yokai's strength stat. This is significant as Solar Elma is one of the most common and powerful yokai in the game. These two completely invalidate him. Bishamantan is the better pick if you have the S slot open, since he is brave, has a better moveset and stats, as well as actually being able to make use of the strength boost unlike Salty Bacon, as Salty Bacon is a magic attacker, and a tank. Salty Bacon works just as well as an LRT though. He's actually pretty damn good as an LRT. While his defensive stats and tribe aren't all too impressive, the fire immunity is still incredibly useful. Plus, his ultimate pressures the back rows, which is always nice. Solar isn't even the only reason they're good. Tunitic, Flengu, Bit of Batter and Hazards from Brutal and Thurston are all decently common, and it's just a nice bit of extra utility on top of their already great tanking potential. These two are great anti-meta picks. Before I move on, I'd also like to mention Mython and Corpton. Corpton resists fire usually, but with Mython he gave him the fire weakness. This allows him to be immune to it when he guards thanks to his skill. Pair this with one of the highest strength stats in the game and decent bulk, and you have yourself a great offensive tank that can counter one of the strongest yokai in the game with relative ease. Number 4. Flipit, Giacomo-san, Pandora and Fukurukuju Soul Revivers. These yokai all share one quality, and it's their ability to counter hazards. Let's talk about them one at a time, as they all do it in different ways. Flipit's main job is to counter slip up specifically. He's the best hazard setter in the game, not counting Solar because he cheats, and the damage from his ice tiles can add up very fast. Having even just one Flipit is great, as a 30% reduction of ice damage is quite a lot and usually is enough to deal with it. However, multiple can work as well. Remember Trip Flip? It's not as good as I thought it was, but it's usable if you need the Brave Unity. Flipit can function quite well as a Brave LRT, and his support to counter one of the strongest yokai out there is a brilliant bonus. Giacomo-san is more of a general counter to all hazards. You can just break him out whenever you need him to clean up the board. His stats aren't too bad either, he can do all right fire damage and hit the back row with his ultimate if he needs to. You can use him as shielding or stealth soul, both can work. Even Peerless if you want. He is A rank in an awkward tribe, but he isn't too difficult to find space for on a lot of teams. Pandora counters hazards as well as ultimate spam, Dedicator and pretty much anything that damages a large area. Her great drain damage paired with her consistent guard and magic res with Blow and Stop Soul makes her take damage stupid well. Again, Charming isn't exactly an amazing try for making unities, but it's worth it to have her. Finally, Fukurukuju Soul Revivers are also pretty great for countering area damage, like hazards. I'm mostly talking about Puppy Nyan, Momo Nyan, and certain builds of Origin Nyan in this case. Fukurukuju Soul triggers and the holder dies, and heals all allies a good chunk. This counters area damage well for pretty obvious reasons. These yokai are all good tanks as they are, so being able to do this just adds to their usefulness. Overall, hazards are pretty difficult to counter and one of the strongest team archetypes in the game, but you've got options. Number 5. Attacker Punishers. These includes 2 yokai. Let's start with Crummy Mummy, because we've already talked about him before and I won't need to go into too much depth here. Crummy Mummy is a yokai that doesn't do much for your team at first glance, but actually he might just save you against somebody that can't play around him. With essentially 3 sludge grudges and the second worst overall bulk in the game, you'll pretty much die to any hit and kill whatever did the killing blow. Bulky attackers like the Enmas and Eldorado might survive it, but it'll be incredibly close and sometimes they will just outright die. You can possibly clean it up with Decisive Blow or some other yokai with that skill who we'll talk about later. The fact that you can just disable the other team's offense right at the beginning of the match is quite significant. Lionheart and Slumberhog did this as well, but they aren't as good. They're still worth using for the Brave Unity though if you need it. As for that other yokai, I'd like to quickly mention Dragon. You mostly hear about him as a great magic tank with shielding Blow and Stop Soul. However, on Nocturne teams you can use him with 2 Percussionist Souls or something of the sort tacked as a makeshift revenge killer. If he dies, he does nothing, but if he lives multiple hits, he can trigger more than once. With his insane spirit stat, it'll do quite a bit of damage. However, the trade-off is that it only affects physical attackers, and you need Nocturne on your team, so it's much more matchup dependent and awkward to build around. It's still useful though. Number 6. Horizontail. Horizontail is better support than you might have expected. An important thing to note about him is that his and Majinyan skills do not affect charge soul charge, so it's really not worth using Majinyan and Soul Ultimate spam teams. Horizontail is much better on these, since Soul Spam is usually very weak to other Soul Spam and Ultimates in general, so you don't want your opponent to get the Ultimates faster. A lot of the best Soul Spammers like Lion, Face Off, Static Hit and Slip Up all have very poor bulk and die very quickly, to most decently powerful Ultimates. Being able to delay this process while still keeping your old Soul Spam going is what makes Horizontail so good. Stinkai has the same skill and he is also good, but his ultimate is much worse. A Spirit debuff is a lot more situational than a shutdown, so Horizontail gets the win here. You should still use Stinkai if you need the Charming Unity though, since Horizontail's tribe isn't all that great and it's hard to make work on Soul Spam. You could maybe use something like Negativos or Snitchin, but neither of those are particularly amazing. Still, if you can get the room on your team, Horizontail is great support for any teams that are really weak to Ultimates. Number 7. Brutal. Brutal is a brilliant yokai, and one of the reasons for this is his ability to ignore one of the most common items in the game, Stealth Soul. His skill seems like a pure negative at first, but it's actually pretty great. You have to play around it and you need to be really smart with your grid play to actually get it to work. If you do though, you'll get top 2 strength in any yokai unfortunate enough to be in front of Brutal when this happens. You can even hold the Stealth Soul himself, which is ideal, as it means he gets the most grid movement options possible, the most important thing Brutal has to have. This counters so many strong strategies, and if you use Brutal well, you're doing pretty damn good as a comp player. Number 8. Ultimate Urbanian. Ultimate Urbanian counters 2 main meta strategies, hazards and switcheroo. More specifically, he counters Solar Enma's hazards. He can be a tank with his amazing bulk and ignore Solar Enma's main tool. It also allows him much more grid movement options. He counters switcheroo because his strength and defense stats are equally great, so he can still function perfectly or fine under the effects of switcheroo. I've even seen a switcheroo team made by a certain person with a Flamrise profile picture that uses 2 Ultimate Urbanian with Stealth Soul as their main attackers. This team uses switcheroo quite differently to others. Most of the time, these teams use attackers with high defense like Sat to the Bone to deal large amounts of damage. Meanwhile, this team uses attackers that are equally strong with or without switcheroo, and instead uses it more so as a counter in and of itself against physical attacking teams and revenge teams. They likely would have considered this archetype while team building with strong attackers that don't have the greatest defense stat, so they can't really deal with it. My own revenge team gets hit extremely hard by switcheroo, as all of the viable yokai with revenge potential I mentioned earlier have low defense. It's pretty much an auto loss, however, I have one against that exact team with my revenge team because of the round bomb. The round bomb is something I've never mentioned on this channel because it's honestly a pretty boring part of battles, but it's still quite important. I might talk about it in future, maybe in its own short video. But I'm getting off topic. Let's move to our final topic. Number 9. Decisive Blow. I've discussed the wonders of this skill many times before, so this will be quick. Decisive Blow means that any yokai on the other team with incredibly low HP gets knocked out instantly. Yokai that rely on living on 1 HP, such as Matronyan, Bitter Patter, and some Originian builds, get hit extremely hard by this skill. You can also help clean up yokai that just barely live to hit, maybe even from a revenge skill. All yokai with this skill are made infinitely more viable because of this. Decisive Blow is an incredible strength booster. El Shakador is one of the best tanks out there. Benziton is a pretty strong lightning attacker and charming. Komanubis is a great drain attacker with a good tribe, and Ancient Emma is either the stupid strong attacker with accuracy support or one of the 2 best tanks for true teams, taking physical hits like absolutely nothing. These yokai would be alright without the skill, but the fact that this effect is so powerful makes them all top tier and worth considering. I praise Komanubis so much, yet I've never actually used the guy. Maybe one day. And there we go. There was going to be more yokai, but I decided to just talk about the most common and powerful ones. Lyrebird and Professor Plumage were originally on the list, but I skipped over them. There are definitely more that I never thought of either. Any you feel I should have brought up? Let me know in the comments. Thank you once again to Rocky for this lovely art, and have a good day.